Inspiration Software is the embroidery software line of G7 Solutions in Designs and Machine Embroidery. Our Inspiration software line includes My Block Piecer, My Quilt Embellisher, Perfect Embroidery Pro, Perfect Stitch Viewer, Word Art and Stitches, and My Quilt Planner. Tonight's webinar is Go Loco. We have a wonderful team assisting us tonight. Inspiration Tech Support Team, Chris L., Nancy R., Dory N., and Tamara E. I would like to present you to the one who is cuckoo for lots of logos, Katherine Artines. Again, thank you for joining us and for keeping us in stitches.
Good evening, everyone. If you have friends who own a business and they've found out you have an embroidery machine, chances are they've asked you to embroider their logo. Perhaps you have your own business or are a member of an organization and you would like to create that design. If you are looking for help to set up a business or what you should charge for digitizing a logo, Marie Zeno has a class on Craftsy about how to start a machinery business that you might be interested in. For tonight, I will share with you how to approach the logo, the tools you have available to recreate it. Not to worry if you don't think you have a need for creating logos. Tonight will basically be about using the tools we have played with all along for artwork, with some additions like the difference between classic satin and satin. Here you see the word logo. It was originally known as a logotype and has been shortened over the years. As you know, it's a graphic representation of a company, and it's usually registered with the Patent and Trademark Office to ensure exclusive use by the owner. If you've been with me before, you know I don't use other people's work knowingly. Therefore, I've asked for and was given permission to use the logos I'm sharing with you tonight. Not only will we be seeing how to create them, but also see what other fun you might have with them. We'll go ahead and get into PEP. We have a clean screen going on, and we're going to begin with an easy one. We are using this evening the backdrop tool, and we've used this before, and you might remember that this uses raster images. In this case, I have a PNG file, and this is a business card from a person that asked me to do this a number of years ago. And in this one, there's a couple different ways that we can go about it, and you'll see that all throughout this evening. And certainly I'm going to try and give you options for you to choose the ones that you feel most comfortable with. Since this is an easy one, I'm going to begin first by looking at our digitizing tools here on the digitizing toolbar, and then to pay attention to the magic wand that is right here. At the moment you see that it's grayed out because we're not allowed to use it at the moment. We have nothing chosen. But if we come to our digitizing tools, for example, if I choose manual, take a look over at the magic wand. It is still not available for us to use. If I choose the run stitch, you see that it is now available. We're going to move right down here to complex fill. I'll click on that to activate it, and I am going to choose the magic wand. In doing that, I'm also going to come down and right click on the green color, and you see that your mouse has changed from an arrow to a magic wand. All we need to do is come into this area, and this actually is a pretty nice artwork, so it's going to be easy for me to use. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'll click once, and then right click to set it, click once, click right click to set, click, right click, click, right click, click, right click, and click, right click. That has put all of those pieces into our complex fill. Now, just a word about my language when I use click and right click. I have shared this with you before, but since we'll be doing quite a bit of it this evening, if I say click, I mean your normal mouse key, your normal left click. I'm not going to say left click, right click. I'm going to say click, right click. So the only time you'll need to do a right click is when I say to do that. If I use the word click any other time, you know that's your normal click. All right, we'll come over here and review a little bit too with our backdrop. If I select that again, let me bring your attention over here into the properties to the ability to adjust the lightness. And I'm going to click on that slider and drag it over just a little bit and apply. What that does is it fades the image out a bit, grays it out, shades it if you will, so that our digitizing, our stitching, can take center stage in the forefront, and you can see them easier. You have the ability to work with this darker, lighter slider anytime you want to, and some people like to work with it a little bit more lighter, as I have it right here, and leave it like that through the whole process. Other people like it darker. Again, no right or wrong here, it's the way that you choose to do it. When we're all finished, we'll go ahead and slide it all the way to lighter so that we can see our design with no background color in there. Our coffee pot looks very fun, so the next thing we're going to do for this is to approach the text. We'll come up here and get our text button. I'll click here above cafe. Comes in green. I'm going to right click on the number 3 just so I have two colors going on here. And when you go to replicate text in a logo, you need to get that as close to the logo as possible, because that is their representation. And as we look at the word cafe, please notice that this particular font is what's called a serif font. A serif is a slight projection or a small line that finishes off a stroke of a letter. So this particular cafe coffee bean is done in a serif font. The one that's currently on my screen is the last one that I used when I was playing with the software, and it is the Bauhaus, and you can see that it is not a serif font. There are no additional strokes at the bottom of the letter. So I'm going to first come over here and I'll type in the word that I need, cafe. I will go ahead and apply so my word comes up on the screen. And then let's go into the window, click on the window for the font, and we're brought into our catalog for our fonts. And what I normally do is go to the very top of the list, and I then start and choose those fonts that are either serifed or sans serifed, whichever I need at the moment. Remember, we need a serif font. This is the first one that I come to, so I'll go ahead and double click it, and I can see that that is not appropriate. The letter C is much too square. So I'll go back into my catalog, and I would continue to go down into the list. As I scroll down here, Bordeaux comes up, and I'll go ahead and click on that. That too is a serif. Again, not quite what we need, and I really would continue to go down through the list, moving across until I found another serif font. Now, this I'm going to stop for a moment, and I'm going to size my word. It's getting a little too large, so I'll bring it back to similar to the size that I actually need, and then we'll take a better look at it. And the Century is better in that the C is rounder, but I think I can do even better than that. And again, I would continue to go all the way down through the list, trying each of my serif fonts, and actually going to skip all the way towards the Times. And I'll double click on that, and here I see that this font is very, very similar to the one that was used, if not exact. So I'm happy with this. I'll bring my cafe down onto the words, and I'll size it just a little bit here and get it to be very similar to the text that's currently on the screen. And that looks pretty nice. I might even use my control key to nudge it over just a little bit and maybe size that back just a hair, and that looks wonderful. Now, the way that I do this, if that word is exactly correct, the size and the font is what I need, I simply will come up here to copy and then paste, and I'll drag that second text box down below. I know it's not the right word. I'll paste again and drag that text box down onto Bean, and what I've done is save myself a little time in getting everything to be the same size as I need it. Now that I have my second text box chosen, I'll come over here and type in the word that I need and apply it, and that looks pretty good. I think I'll spread it just a little bit, and then here for the last text box I'll come in and type in Bean, and we'll go ahead and apply. And I'll scoot that over just a little bit, and you can see how I'm using that symbol that is underneath the backdrop tool. That is in the background. I talk about that being behind the glass. Okay, this looks pretty good. Now, as we take a look at this word cafe, and I'll drag this up again so you can see the difference. We notice that the original word cafe has an accent mark to it, and my E does not. So let me share with you a little. We're going to click in the text box. I'll backspace out that E. I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard, and from the numeric keypad, I'm typing in a 0201, letting go with my Alt key, and you can see that that particular combination gave me the accented E that I need. Now, I know that you're asking, how did I know that number would give me that? So let me show you where I went to find this. I do have it on my bookmarks. I'm going to come down here to the Windows Alt key codes, and it is here. Certainly you could search for your Windows Alt key codes. This is the chart that I used to find the letter that I needed, and as you see it right here, it was an acute accent, the E with the accent facing the proper way, and here you can also see is the magic number that I used, and right down here gives us the information to use the Alt key and the numeric keypad in combination with the number that the accent that I needed and the number. So there you have the secret to getting an accent if you need it. At this point, I'm going to come back to my backdrop tool, click on that, and slide my button all the way over to lighter so that I'm actually just seeing my business card or the logo. And I take a better look at it even at the 100%, and I see that that works very well. We could save it at this point, or we could run it through one of our other tools that we have. We're going to click on File and come down here to click to stitch. Now, I've already talked about this in greater detail than we'll do this evening, and that was in the January 2015 webinar, if you want to reference that for more information. But what this does for us, let's say that the person that asked for this logo was going to put it on a polo shirt. I'm going to use the drop-down arrow, and I'm choosing the two-way stretch, knit, and in doing so, I will keep all of the offerings that the box gives me. It is here that you can make your decision if you want to apply any of these other things, your density or underlay, new pull. I'm going to remove the pull just to show you that you can. We'll go ahead and apply that. Say yes to that box that comes up. We go to next, and here is the information that is going to share, suggesting that I use a fusible stabilizer on the back, and also that I use a topper. At this point, I could do a finish. It's going to ask me to name it. I'll go ahead and call it Coffee Polo and save that. And certainly I would repeat that save for my machine format. Now, there's another tool under File, and it's right down here called Design Analysis. If you've never taken a look at it, it gives us very nice information about the design. Some of that information can be found up here on the information bar, but here we have the details. Here are the colors that are used and the thread length and all of that information if you'd like it. If you indeed are doing this for production work, you might be interested in the stitch length, that the percentages of stitch length in there. And also for your production, this will tell you how long the sewing time will be for this particular design. Now, if you've not played in yours will come up as generic. I have put the letter Z in front of generic so that it's at the bottom of my list, and you can see the three machines that I've created because you have the add button right here, but the three machines that I have, and I've set them at the individual speed. So if I work on my Destiny, I have 600 stitches per minute. On my Alliance it would be 1,000, and so forth. So I could pick a different machine and see the time that it will take to do that design. So this is helpful if you need that. But let's go back to details, and I'd like to point out the very last item here, and that's the trims. I have 14 trims in this design right now, and if we are doing this as a home embroidery project just for us, that might not matter how many trims we have. But if you are doing this as a production or for a customer, anytime you have a trim, your machine is going to stop slightly and then move on. So you do have some option when you are working with trim. Now I'll zoom in just a little bit here on the letters themselves, because this is where we have the most trims happening. I'd like to select all of the text and then come over to our Command button in Properties and take a look down here at the trim default, and it is for characters. And we can see over in the letters themselves there are no jump stitches in there. So if you need to do so, you can use your drop down and choose, I'm going to choose lines so you can see the difference, and apply, and you can see that it will now not trim in between those individual characters, but rather it will trim at the end of each line. So you have that opportunity to use it if it is important for you to do so. The other thing that we can do is if I select all the pieces on my coffee pot and I come up here to Edit and come down here to Optimize Entry and Exit, I'll go ahead and set that. Then if we were to come back into our design analysis, you can see that we have shortened 14 trims to 3. So a much better job as far as the stitch out concerned, once again, if that is important to you. You would make that decision whether or not you wanted all those trims to happen or not, depending on the reason for this job. All right, let's take a look at another. And in this case, we'll do a new screen. I'm going back under my backdrop tool. I'm choosing this business card. A friend of mine has a quilting studio, and she asked me to play with her logo. Now in this case, she gave me her business card, and you can see that this is not a good piece of artwork to start with. You can see that it's very in and out, shadowed and so forth, and this fabric that she has on her card printed is not going to do well for embroidery. So let me back out of here. I'll leave this up because we'll come back to it, but another clean screen, back into our backdrop, and what I did is I went onto her website and was able to capture the artwork that she had on the website, and you can see that this is much better for our purposes for embroidery. Once again, we can come up here and take a look at the designs we have. Whoops, I know what. Let's at first, before we move forward with our magic wand, let's make sure that the size we want is set for our backdrop image. I'm going to come over here with our slide out and choose Define Scale. And I'm going to go across from the widest part across the logo, and this is too big. I want this to come down to a 2.5 inches, and now this is the size of the image that I will stitch out. So you're always better off to set that size first before you go and create the stitches. Now I will zoom in just a little bit here and come up, and I'm going to once again choose my complex fill and once again choose my magic wand. I'll come down here and right click on blue, and remember we're going to click, right click to set it, come down here and choose my yellow, click, right click to set, come down and choose my red, click, and we see with the magic wand these two values were not different enough for the magic wand to separate them. So it made both of these one unit. All we need to do is come over here to our shape key, and I will click and drag around all of those points, right click, delete the points. I can see I left two up there. Right click and delete those points, and let me go ahead and apply so you can see what's happened here, and we'll zoom in just a little bit. And now all I need to do, here's my line, I'm going to right click on that line and add a point, right click, and make that a line point because I know I need it straight. I'm also going to drag this one, make that a line, and put that back up into my corner. And you see where the stop is right in my way here for what I might want to do. So remember, we can always do a right click, edit just the outlines, and then I can see that point much better. And I'm going to make that a line as well. Drag that in just a bit. All right, so now if I apply, the red fills up this area. We know that we cannot use the magic wand again because of the value. So this time I'm going to come up to my artwork, choose my pen tool, turn off the magic wand because I'm simply going to, let me grab my orange color, I'm going to set those points where I want them to be, and I'm going to right-click to end right there, choose my shape, right-click on that point, and ask it to close that line. Now I have that shape set in the color. I will select it, right-click, convert to complex fill. Let's back out a little bit here so you can see what we have. I'll turn on our 3D, and our shapes are very nicely formed. But the next thing that we'd like to do, you can see because of the fill, we have different directions going on here. So I'm going to use my shape tool and set the angle lines where I want them to be. So I'm dragging those black dots. You can see that this yellow line is going across. I'm setting the angle across the widest part of the shape, and I'll apply. I'll click on my pink and do the same. I'm going to drag those black dots. Now, once again, that stop is in my way, so I'll do a right-click edit, and this time choose just the angle lines so I can see it better, and I have that at the widest point. With the blue, I'll select that as well. Come over here and select that with my shape key, and the angle is right, but I'm going to put it where the other ones are across that widest part so that I know everything is the same, and apply. And with this yellow one, this one's going to be a little tough for you to see. Can you see it that it's right here, right there? It's yellow on yellow. So we're going to click that and drag, click that and drag across the widest point, and now we have direction. And what we've done right there is to give a little interest to the design, since they're all the same shape and they're all complex fill. By our setting the direction, we're going to have those threads catch the light differently, and it'll just be a little bit more interesting design than if we had left them all going in the same direction. The last thing that we need to do is the outline here, the column outline. So let's come up, and you may remember that columnar steel stitch is perfect for our column. So we'll click the steel, and I'm going to show you what happens when we use the magic wand. I'll go ahead and click, let me change my color here, and click right on that column. And what happens is not really what we want. When we chose the magic wand, what it actually did is to read both the outside and inside of that column, and it gave us a double column, and that isn't what we want. So let's delete that. We'll go back up to our steel stitch, but this time no magic wand, and at this point I will need to click and set my points for this outside column border. So I'll, oops, that one wasn't good, so I can do my backspace, and we'll just quickly go and set those points. And all I'm trying to do here is to stay in the middle of the column, knowing full well that I can come back and work with my shapes, points, and so forth, and I'll just go ahead and right-click to end it, and you see how lovely that came out with our columnar steel stitch. So here we have the image part. Now, this particular design is not quite finished. Oops, go a little farther out, because remember, it also has words to it. So once again, we'll go into our text box, and we know that that's a serif font, but I'll go ahead and type in the first, oops, the first text box that I need for ta-da, and we'll come in, and knowing here looking at these words, knowing that I need this time a sans serif font, something that does not have any of those lines or marks at the bottom of the characters. Also, too, notice that the letter A has a little hook to it. So again, I would scroll all the way back to the top, and I would start with the first sans serif font, which is an Arial, and I'll zoom out here and size this particular box. It's a little too large to play with at the moment, so we'll bring this ta-da here, and actually that looks pretty darn close. I could go in and I could show you other ones, but the Arial and the block we're going to do a very nice job. So once again, I would do my copy, paste, drag that box down, come up here and paste again, and drag that box down, and then go in and change those to be the words I need them to be. And I'll quickly type in quilting, and we'll apply that. And I'll select these three, come back up here, copy, come over to my design with the image on it, and I will select here and paste. Those words are, oops, did I not catch all of them? I did not. Let me go back and get all of them. Tell you what, before we do that, let's size them just a little bit. Now we'll do a copy, come over to design 3, select and paste, and I'll get rid of this little tiny guy here and bring those words right down to the bottom, change the color to red, and then also I would come up with all three of those lines chosen. I would come up here to the horizontal center line so that they're now centered, and I'm also going to group those, and I will group the image also so that I can select everything and once again do a horizontal center, and here is my design as it needs to be. Last thing I would do would be to come to backdrop, come over and use my slider so that I can see the design standing alone. Is it as it should be? And it looks quite nice there. We certainly could do all of those things we did with the click to stitch and design analysis and so forth, but let me show you one other thing here. If we come back into our slides, you can see that when I did my test stitch outs, and I can't stress this enough, when you are doing logos, you really want to do a test stitch out on an appropriate piece of fabric because you don't want to ruin that expensive shirt or jacket or whatever it might be. So the one on the left is my first stitch out, and you can see we have issues right here with some of the fabric showing between. So what I did is went into the design again and fixed the pull compensation, and you can see the second stitch out was quite lovely. So let's come back into our design here, and the way that I did that, I'm going to select my symbol. I need to ungroup it first, and then I'm going to select just the 4 pieces that make up that center, come over here to our pull push properties, and I'm going to choose absolute, and I set it at a 0.5, left it at both, and I did an apply. And that's what allowed me to have the preferred stitch out. Now, in another webinar coming up, we're going to delve into push-pull and make sure that you understand that. But while we're talking about logos, it was important for you to see that you might have an issue or two that needs to be addressed, and once it is addressed, you can see how lovely that came out. All right, at this point, we'll take a breath here. And Dory, do we have any questions that have come in so far? All right, if not, I'll just move right ahead. I have to force myself to stop talking and ask those questions. We're going to select this portion of the design, and we're going to copy it, come into a clean screen, and paste it. And what I want to show you here is how you can go about creating a design, part of the logo, and set it up to be a patch. in that you could have it be a standalone piece of embroidery. In this case, with this being my design, I would come down here into the sequence view, and you can see that we set this as a steel. I would come up and do a right click, convert to, I'm going to make that an applique, so that that gives me the ability to do a placement line and tack down line, and then a full-blown applique. Certainly it increased the width of that border. You could come over here for your applique width, and you could put that back to a 3 if you wanted to. I do change my colors and apply on my applique. The other thing that I need to do, and this, the order of this would be a little bit your choice, but you need to understand that this applique, remember it is all one piece, all 3 of those, the placement line, the tack down line, and the satin stitch, are going to stitch out one after another. This inside, these 4 squares inside, currently in sequence view, stitch out before the applique, and that is not logical. So once this is set the way you want it to be, we can do a right click, break up path. What that does, if you take a look over here in your sequence view, it has separated the placement and the tack down. I have selected both of those, and I'm going to come up here and ask to move to back, which means they will stitch out first, and then all of my design will be inside. I can make that trim, and then I could do the satin stitch. The other thing you could have done is, if you didn't want to break it apart, break up the path, you could have simply moved the entire applique to stitch out first. Then everything would be trimmed, and all of this would be stitching in the middle. Okay, we'll see a little bit later how we might use that patch, but you can do that with any type of logo. Let's go back to the Ta-Da logo, and we'll zoom in on this a little bit, and I'm going to select the seal stitch. Sure I have the right one here, and I'm going to drag it over to the side and bring back our backdrop so that we can see our border. I'll apply that, and I want to show you what other options you have. Didn't want to do that. Pick that steel again and move that more out of the way. I want to show you what your other options are when you're dealing with column. We talked about showing you the differences between your satin stitch and your classic satin, and this particular border is a very good one to show you how that might work. They are very similar, but the big difference is how they are created. We're going to start with our satin stitch. I'm going to change to a different color here, and when you create a satin column, you are going to set all of your points on the, in this case, the outside. You'll do a right click, and then you'll set all of the points on the inside. Let's see how that works. It's going to be a click. I'll move up, and I could move all the way to this point here. Click. I could take short strokes if I wanted. But when I have set the outside of the column, I do a right click, and then I come over to the other side of the column, and I can click. I could click right across from those. I don't have to. The whole idea is that I am doing the outside of the column, right click the inside. I'll click my last point, do a right click to set, and you can see that satin is columnar. To show you the difference with our classic, let me choose a different color. And with a classic, the difference is that if I start on the outside, I must immediately go to the inside. So I'm going out and in, out and in, out and in. Let's see how that works. I'll click, and now I need to come to the opposite of that point. I'll go back to the outside, come to the inside, back to the out, go to the in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, and I'll right click to end that, and that is our classic satin. They are very similar In fact, if you were to look at them, you wouldn't necessarily know how they were created. If you take a look over here in our sequence view, you'll see that both of them are considered a satin stitch. They're not differentiated with a classic satin. The properties are the same for both. The underlay is the same for both. It's just the way that they are created. Let's take a look at this next slide, and you'll see this top picture came right from your manual for Perfect Embroidery Pro. And again, this is the satin stitch, and you're going to set all of the points on one side of the column. So you can see that you're going to follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right-click when you're finished, and then you're setting the points on the other side of the column. Right-click to end. You're doing a classic satin. I created this one to show you that with your satin and classic satin, you're allowed to create uneven width in your satin stitch. So here, if our first point was 1, we'd go up for 2, down for 3, up for 4, down for 5, up 6, down, and up. Classic satin is sometimes referred to as point counterpoint. For every point you have on one side, you have a corresponding point on the other side. Here's one other slide to show you that our own Nancy R. has graciously shared this image from one of her tutorials to show you again. Your classic satin is point counterpoint. 1, 2, 3 is up, 4 is down, 5 is up, 6 is down, and so forth. And you can see that here is just the satin. You're setting one side of the column, right-click, and then you set all of the other points on the other side of the column. With the steel, you only set the points going down the column because the steel is an evenly spaced satin stitch. It's very often referred to as a balanced satin stitch. If we take a look back into that design, let's go ahead and zoom out so you can see. This is our steel stitch. Everything is equal length, and we could have changed any of that width in the classic or the satin, but this one was an easy one to show you, so I did work with that. Dory, we'll stop here, and are there any questions at this point?
Yes, there is a couple, and there was a couple before, but I couldn't get my mic to behave. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
If I'm saving a logo from the internet website, what type should I use?
It depends on, I actually have a capture program that will save as a raster image, a PNG or a JPEG. That generally is the one that's easier to work with or to capture. It just depends what software you're using to capture that logo image. And again, you know, we're going to insert that idea of permission. We're not just going to take anything from anybody's website, but if we're asked to do something and we have the permission to do that, I have a program that does that for me. If you're using a raster as a JPEG or PNG, you're going to use your backdrop tool. If your design comes in as a vector, if it's a WMF or a SVG, then you would need to go under your file and do your import artwork to be able to bring that to screen. If someone needs to, they can refer back to those 2015 webinars where we did talk about the artwork and the raster and vector images. Okay? All right, I'll go ahead and move forward. With the new screen, we're going to once again go into our backdrop tool. The next one I have to play with is, this is from our local Children's Advocacy Center. Again, I have worked with them to do some fun things with their logo. And in this case, I'm going to begin with zooming in a little bit, but definitely I need to go in and ask to define the scale. This little guy is very small. He came from their business card because they have a new image, and I simply click and drag my scale across the feet area, and I know that I want that to be 2.5, so I'll go ahead and OK that. And I don't care that he's too big for you to see, because what we're going to concentrate on right here are his feet. I'd like to show you again, working with your steel, your satin, your classic satin, and your pen tool, the options that you have when you are working with your artwork. You can see that once I blow this little guy up, he is very pixelated, so the magic wand would not work here at all. We'll come up here, and I'm going to first choose my steel. Again, no magic wand. I want to change color so that you can see it on the blue. And with my steel, remember, all I need to do is click within the center of what is going to be the column. I could hold down my control key as I am clicking here. I'll do a right click to end, turn on my 3D so you can see it. You certainly could use your control key while you're creating, but very often I will just select all of my points. Oops. I'll select all of them and right click and hit a smooth in there all at one time. But what I want to show you here is with your steel, whereas it's very easy to use, there are a couple of disadvantages in this particular case. First of all, you can see that the ends are blunt, and that's what a steel stitch will do. It will give us a straight end. Remember that a steel is a balanced satin stitch. It's going to be the same width all the way around. The other disadvantage for this particular project is this little bear's foot right here gets wider, and I can't do that with a steel stitch. So let's see what our other option would be. I'm going to try my classic satin, because for me that makes a lot of sense to do a point counterpoint. So I'm going to click on the inside, out, in, out, in, out, and so forth. I could continue to tell you inside, out, and so forth, but I don't want it to be too monotonous here. But notice the advantage is right here when this foot gets wider, I can accommodate that as I am using my classic satin. And again, in, corresponding point, out, in, out, in, out. And the other thing that I can do when I get close here to the end is in, I can angle that last point and right click so that I do not have, let's change that color, so I do not have the blunt ends of the steel, but I can do tapering right in here. And if I have a little bit of angle situation, all I need to do is come in and grab those angle lines and straighten it out. Sometimes when you're first learning your classic, it takes just a little bit to get the hang of your point, counterpoint, but you see that it's absolutely very easy to go in and edit if your points have been off just a little bit, and I can apply that, and the satin looks much better. All right, we come up here to his body and other paw, and in this case, your other option, instead of using one of these classic satins, you could come over here to your pen. I will choose the pen. I don't want the magic wand, and I'll change my color once again so you can see. And I simply click around this area and trace around that artwork, that pixelated artwork, and I continue to move on and give this just a little bit of in and out right here for his foot. And I would continue to just simply trace the area, going up with my pen tool, and again click, and I'm going to right click at that point, take my shape button, right click and ask it to close that line, and then I would do very quickly select them all and put the smooth. Let's get our select tool, right click, convert to, and I would do a satin, and we take a look here then at our bear, and we can see that we could move on with whatever tool was comfortable for you. I'll show you what he looks like nicely done as we bring up our finished bear. I'll turn on the 3D so you can see that once I took my time and I played with my points and got them the way I wanted to, this is our finished little advocacy bear. You can see that I did take liberty with the eyes as they are here on the card. They looked much better if I was actually going to set them as circles. So here we have our bear. Now, we have one other area that we want to talk about, and that's pathing. Dory, do we have any questions? I know we're having some trouble here with the mic. Do we have any other questions at this point before I move into pathing?
Yes. The direction
Okay.
of the stitch, is that
Yes.
going to impact the push-pull comp?
It does. And along with the direction of the stitch is the fabric, and the direction of that stitch on the fabric, if it's a loosely woven and so forth. That is one of the reasons, again, I cannot stress enough why we need to do a test sew. Whereas this little guy might look wonderful on screen, there might be some issue on the push-pull in some of those curves coming in and out and so forth. So again, we would do our test and then come back and see if we needed to adjust any of those directions. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, clean screen. I have a design started for us. And in this case, I will pull up my logo that is behind the glass. It is in the backdrop tool. Let me shade it out for you just a little bit so you can see it. What I've done to prepare us for this talk about pathing is I went ahead and used my pencil and drew around the shapes that are going to be white. All right, so what you see in orange are those white areas. I did it in orange so you could see it. You wouldn't be able to see it very well if I had put it in white, but I will bring that darker back a little bit so you can see it. What's going to happen here is we want the white to stitch out first, and then the blue will be stitched out after the white. When we talk about pathing, we are talking about creating your design so that you have no jumps, no trims, no unnecessary stops between areas of the same color. So this is a good one to share with you on the areas of white. And I now will take this logo away for the moment so you can concentrate on our pieces. If you were to come over here to sequence view, it's all artwork, and you can see if we ran down the path in the artwork, you can see that I created these pieces from left to right and then back towards the left again. So when I created them, I did so in an order that made sense for stitching. At this point, these are going to be complex fill. So I'm going to select all of those, right-click, convert to complex fill. All right, we'll turn on the 3D so you can see that. Now again, it's in orange, it will be in white, but this is something you can see easily. And what we're going to do with pathing, it's the idea that we connect this piece to this piece to this piece and so forth. Perhaps you have seen traveling stitches on designs that you've stitched out, and in essence that's what we are creating. We're going to come up here and choose the Run Stitch. I do not have any magic wand set, and I'm keeping it in orange so that you can see with our running stitch, I'm going to start right down here in the lower corner of the first section, and I'll click just inside that, move over to my second section, and click just inside that second section. I'll right-click to end that one run. I'm going to do the same here, move over here, and right-click to end. Now what I'm doing is setting that run stitch between them. I'm not going to worry about what jump stitches might occur and so forth. And I've also positioned these run stitches at the bottom here. You want to try and put it in the least obtrusive point of the design. I certainly don't want to run it right across the top just in case some of that thread, not that it's going to show, but that it might have a little bit of depth to it. So I'm going to put it down here where it's unobtrusive, and then I'll come back to this top of this space. I will click here and jump over to my next area where I click to end. Now this piece, this top of the S is going to go to the bottom of the S, so I'll come click within, click there, right click to end, and then I want that jump to happen here over to the W, right click to end, and then I want this W to attach to this arc, right click to end, and then I'm going to bring the top of the arc into the ball, right click to end. I'll click in the ball again to the other part, and you can see that where I'm putting this stitch is again in what I think is the least obtrusive area. Now from this ball I'm going to go, I need to click within the ball again and then click in the eye, right click to end, and once again the eye over to the last arc and right click to end. Now again we see jump stitches and we don't have to worry about that because the second part of this is, do you notice, let me grab my box here and make that larger. Do you notice that I have, and I purposely left it all one color so that it's all in one area. I have a set of run stitches, all of my complex fill are in the proper order, and my run stitches are in the proper order. So I'm going to click on this run and drag it up and drop it right on my first complex fill, and you can see it goes in right underneath it. I'll come down here, take my second run, come up and drag it on my next complex fill in the list. I'll do the third and come up and drag and drop, and you can see what we have here: complex fill, run, complex fill, run, and so forth. And we're going to complete that process. You can see that I get to a point where I do have to scroll down, and I'm clicking and dragging and dropping it on the next complex fill in order in the list of them. So you can see now why it was helpful for us to put that complex fill pieces in the order that we wanted the stitch out to happen, and also that we created those run stitches in that same order. Alright, so now you can see I have run, fill, run, fill, run, fill, and again we see them, but at this point, remember this is going to be white. Let's go ahead and bring back our backdrop design, put that back where it belongs, and you can see those traveling stitches to the next area. But let's now go ahead and choose all of that orange, right click down here on the white, and now I'm going to go up to my Digitizing Tools and choose Complex Fill. I am going to use the magic wand, and I'll right click on the blue color, and I'm going to click within the blue, right click to set it, and when we do that, do you notice that all of the run stitches of the white are now under your blue, which is exactly what we wanted, so that we don't have those jumps and trims or unnecessary stops in this design. Now, I certainly could finish it by adding those yellow areas here, so I'll go ahead and right click on my yellow. I still have complex fill. I could choose my satin. We'll see if that's what gives me what I'd like, and I can click within, right click to set, and click within, right click to set, and again come out just a little bit. And did you know that if 100 is too small and 200 is too big, you can always go up in your box and type in the percentage that you want for your zoom and bring it to screen as you'd like. We'll go back onto our backdrop, slide that all the way over to lighter so we see none, and there is our logo created. And again, paying attention to our pathing. I have one more to show you here, and this is one that I was playing with, and I left it exactly as I did it so that you can see I really do. When I create one, I play with all kinds of text boxes on the screen until I find a font that I think is very similar to the one that is on the logo. The ones in blue here were the ones that I ended up with, and in this case they happen to be a true type font. You certainly have that option. Definitely I would test those to make sure that they come out nice, since they are the true types, and played with the letter V here that's going to be in the middle. This is Villa Maria Blue Wings, but I want to show you something. Here's one little trick that I use, and do you notice that I have created nothing more than a slanted line. I actually created it with the pencil, and I drew it in such a way that it helped align the ends of those bars on these blue wings. And what that allowed me to do then is when I was creating the bar, I knew to set my points right along that diagonal line, which is artwork, and that helped all of my ends to be in order. When we are looking at this, I brought this up to show you that, again, it depends on why you are doing this logo. If I were doing this logo for a production, then I might want to put in those pathing, those run stitches here so that I don't have those trims and machine stops. Or if I were doing it on my own for myself, maybe I don't care that I'm have those stop and starts with the trims. I'm not concerned with the time for this particular logo, so I might choose to just do those bars with no pathing in between. So again, it's up to you, and it's also based on how you're going to use that design. When I actually ended up with this, there were 3 different ways that I could use this design. This is the logo that I had to work with, and if I show you in 3D, this one has no background, this one has a white background, and this one is exactly like this with the white and the blue in the square. At this point, once you start playing with your logos, you can certainly create them and use them as we normally would if it's on a t-shirt, a polo, whatever it might be on. But do you remember when we created the quilting studio as a patch? And here I created that, this actually is for a John Wright Sports is the name of his company, and I created that as a patch to show you that when you do this, when you treat it as a standalone applique or a patch, you can now do all of that pretty embroidery, but you can sew it over an area that might be difficult to hoop. If this is a denim vest with the heavier seams and the pocket seams and so forth, this would be much easier to sew in place by simply doing the embroidery and then cutting it out and having the edges finished and then stitch it to your garment. You also can use it on different kinds of things. Here it's just done in a basket. You could do it on a cup holder, whatever it is that you want to do with it. Here's another sample of some fun stuff. Here was our little advocacy bear that I put on a covered button. I actually wear these as jewelry. This is all mine, and this was the Villa Maria Blue Wings, a little different logo here because they have a couple of them depending on the sport, and another covered button with my granddaughter's number on that as I sat in the stands watching basketball. And then here you can see that I really did go over the top for my team spirit, and I created a collar, a Crazy Patch collar with a number of their different logos and so forth on it. So you can have a lot of fun with your logos. You can do it the traditional way, but you can also do some fun things with them as well. Dory, do we have any final questions for this evening?
No, but we have a couple interesting remarks. I want you to know, in your audience tonight, you have a Villa Maria High School gal. Her name is Elizabeth.
Oh, my goodness. Hello, Elizabeth, a fellow Erieite and
Yes,
Villa Maria. Yes, wonderful.
and our friend Gay notes
Yes.
in her text to us, a friend of hers created the first child advocacy center, and it's used as a model and trains other centers.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Did she also use the bear, I wonder? Did it come from her?
I don't know.
I don't know. Very wonderful. It is a small world, indeed.
It is. Thank you so much for
It
sharing
is.
tonight.
Thank you, Dory. Thank you all for joining me. Good night.
Good night.